The radio crackled to life as Officer Mark Stevens adjusted his patrol car's rearview mirror, scanning the bustling streets of downtown Portland. Unit 47, we've got reports of suspicious activity near Pine and 3rd, dispatch announced. His partner, Officer Tammy Lee, looked up from her incident report, her eyes immediately alert. That's the area where we've been getting those calls about kids going missing, Tammy said, her voice tight with concern. What they were about to witness would shake them to their core and change one young girl's life forever. Mark pulled the cruiser around the corner, and immediately they both saw it. A group of older men had cornered a teenage girl against a brick wall in the narrow alley between two buildings. The girl couldn't have been more than 16, her long dark hair falling across her face as she tried to push past them. "We need to move now," Tammy said, already reaching for her radio. But before she could call for backup, the situation exploded into chaos. The girl suddenly broke free, sprinting toward the street with desperate speed. One of the men lunged after her, catching her arm just as she reached the sidewalk. That's when Mark hit the sirens. "Portland Police, step away from the girl," Mark shouted as both officers jumped from their vehicle. The men scattered like roaches when the lights hit, disappearing into the maze of alleyways that connected this part of the city. But the girl didn't run. Instead, she stumbled backward, tripping over a loose section of sidewalk. As Tammy rushed to help her up, the girl's oversized jacket rode up, and her skirt shifted awkwardly. In that split second, as Tammy instinctively reached to help steady her clothing, both officers caught a glimpse of something that made them freeze. "Oh my God," Tammy whispered, her hand still extended toward the girl. Mark's eyes widened as he processed what he'd just seen. This wasn't just a simple case of harassment or attempted assault. This was something much bigger, much more dangerous. The girl, who would later identify herself as Mia Carter, immediately became defensive, yanking her jacket down and backing away from the officers. "I'm fine," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "I don't need any help. Those guys weren't doing anything wrong." But Mark and Tammy had seen enough to know that Mia was lying. Little did they know that what they'd glimpsed beneath her clothing would lead them into the darkest corners of Portland's underground, where vulnerable teenagers disappeared without a trace. "Mia, we're not here to get you in trouble," Tammy said gently, using the calm voice she'd perfected during her 8 years on the force. "But we need to talk about what just happened here, and we need to talk about what you're hiding." Mia's eyes darted between the two officers, calculating her options. Her phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, but she ignored it. "I told you I'm fine. Can I go now?" Mark stepped forward, his expression serious but kind. "Those men who were bothering you, have you seen them before?" For just a moment, Mia's carefully constructed facade cracked. Fear flashed across her face before she could hide it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice betrayed her. The phone in her pocket buzzed again, more insistently this time, then again, and again. Whoever was trying to reach her wasn't giving up easily. "Mia," Tammy said softly, "I've been doing this job for a long time. I know when someone is in danger, even if they won't admit it. Especially when they won't admit it." The teenager's composure finally began to crumble. Her hands shook as she wrapped her arms around herself, and for the first time since they'd arrived, she looked her age. Vulnerable, scared, desperately alone. But what happened next shocked everyone. Just as Mia seemed ready to open up, ready to trust these two officers who genuinely wanted to help her, her phone rang with a different tone. A tone that made her face go completely white. She looked down at the caller ID, and Mark could see pure terror replace the cautious hope that had been building in her eyes. This decision would change everything, but none of them knew it yet. "I have to take this," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible above the street noise. But the real shock was still coming. The silence in the patrol car felt suffocating as Officer Mark Stevens caught his partner's eye in the rearview mirror. Officer Tammy Lee's expression mirrored his own shock. They had both seen something that didn't make sense. Something that changed everything about this seemingly routine intervention. "Mia," Tammy said gently, turning in her seat to face the 15-year-old girl huddled in the back. "We need to talk about what we saw back there." Mia's dark eyes flashed with defiance. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I don't know what you're talking about," she muttered, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. Mark pulled the car over to the curb, the engine idling as he studied the girl's reflection. What they had glimpsed beneath her clothing wasn't what any teenager should be carrying. The outline of what appeared to be some kind of recording device had been unmistakable, secured against her leg with medical tape. "Listen, kid," Mark said, his voice steady but concerned. "Those guys back there, they weren't just random street thugs, were they? You were running from them for a reason." For a moment, Mia's tough facade cracked. Her lower lip trembled slightly before she caught herself. "You don't understand. Nobody understands." "Then help us understand," Tammy pressed. "We've seen enough kids in trouble to know when someone's in real danger. Those men, they had you surrounded. If we hadn't shown up when we did, they weren't going to hurt me," Mia snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. "At least not yet. I was supposed to meet someone else first." The officers exchanged glances. This was bigger than they'd initially thought. "Who were you supposed to meet?" Mark asked. Mia's phone, which Tammy had confiscated during the arrest, suddenly buzzed to life from the front seat. The screen lit up with an incoming call, but the caller ID showed only a series of numbers. No name, no contact information. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before falling silent. Then immediately started ringing again. "Somebody really wants to talk to you," Tammy observed, watching Mia's face go pale. "Don't answer it," Mia whispered urgently. "Please don't answer it." But before either officer could respond, the phone started buzzing with text messages. One after another, the notifications poured in, each message making Mia sink deeper into the back seat. "Mia, sweetheart," Tammy said softly, "we can protect you, but you have to tell us what's really going on here." The girl's composure finally shattered. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she spoke in broken sentences. "My mom, she doesn't know. She works double shifts at the diner just to keep our lights on. I thought I was helping." "Helping how?" Mark prompted gently. "They said it was easy money. Just go to parties, hang out with older guys, nothing serious." But then, Mia's voice trailed off as she touched her leg where they'd seen the device. "Then they wanted me to do other things. Record things. Get evidence on their competitors." The phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. "Evidence of what?" Tammy asked, though she was beginning to piece together the horrifying picture. But before Mia could answer, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up behind their patrol car. The headlights blazed through the rear window, and all 3 occupants felt the temperature in the car drop several degrees. Mia's breathing became rapid and shallow. "They found us," she whispered. "Oh God, they found us." Mark's hand instinctively moved to his radio as he watched 2 figures emerge from the SUV in his side mirror. They weren't walking like people who wanted to have a friendly conversation. "Tammy," he said quietly, "call for backup. Now." But as his partner reached for her radio, Mia grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Wait," she said, her voice suddenly steady despite the tears. "There's something else you need to know first. Something that changes everything about who's really behind this." The figures from the SUV were now walking toward their patrol car with purpose, and whatever Mia was about to reveal, it was clear that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. Officer Stevens paces the station's interrogation room, his mind racing as he reviews the case notes scattered across the metal table. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting harsh shadows across Mia's defiant face as she sits with her arms crossed, still refusing to give them the full story. "The group you were with, Mia," Tammy begins, leaning forward with genuine concern in her voice. "We ran their names through our database. 3 of them have priors for drug trafficking, and 1 has connections to something much worse." Mia's expression shifts slightly, a flicker of fear breaking through her tough exterior. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the hum of the air conditioning. Stevens pulls up a mugshot on his tablet, sliding it across the table. Tell me about Vincent Torres, ringleader of your little group. Because according to our records, he's been recruiting girls your age for months. The color drains from Mia's face as she stares at the photograph. Her hands tremble as she pushes the tablet away. He said he was helping kids like me. Kids who didn't have anywhere else to go. Helping how exactly? Tammy presses, her maternal instincts kicking in as she notices tears forming in Mia's eyes. Before Mia can answer, Stevens' radio crackles to life. Unit 247, we have a possible location on your suspect Vincent Torres. Apartment complex on 5th and Madison, Unit 3B. Stevens exchanges a meaningful glance with Tammy. This could be their breakthrough. We're going to check this out, he tells Mia. When we get back, I need you to be completely honest with us. Lives might depend on it. 20 minutes later, the two officers stand outside a rundown apartment building, backup units positioned at strategic points around the perimeter. Stevens feels his heart pounding as they climb the stairs to the 3rd floor, each step echoing through the narrow hallway. Police! Open up! Tammy shouts as Stevens pounds on the door marked 3B. The door swings open to reveal a middle-aged man in a business suit, looking genuinely confused. Officers? What's this about? We're looking for Vincent Torres, Stevens responds, hand resting on his weapon. Vincent? He moved out 3 weeks ago. I'm the landlord, James Mitchell. Here's my identification. The man produces his driver's license and property management papers. Torres left suddenly, didn't even pay his last month's rent. Tammy's shoulders sag as she realizes they've hit another dead end. Did he leave any forwarding address? Anything that might help us locate him? Nothing. But funny you should ask. Mitchell scratches his head thoughtfully. A girl came by yesterday looking for him too. Young, maybe 16. Said it was urgent. Stevens and Tammy lock eyes, both thinking the same thing. Another victim. Did she leave a name? Stevens asks urgently. Yeah, said her name was Sarah. Sarah Williams. Seemed real scared when I told her Vincent was gone. Back at the station, the weight of the case settles heavily on both officers as they process this new information. They found another potential victim, but Torres remains in the wind. Stevens runs his hands through his hair, frustrated by their lack of progress. There's something Mia isn't telling us, Tammy observes, watching the girl through the one-way glass. Look at her body language. She knows more than she's letting on. Stevens nods, studying Mia's nervous fidgeting. She's protecting someone. Question is, who? As if on cue, Stevens' phone buzzes with an urgent text from the cybercrime unit. Phone analysis complete on confiscated device. You need to see this immediately. The message sends a chill down both officers' spines. Whatever they're about to discover could change everything they thought they knew about this case. Get ready, Tammy, Stevens says grimly as they head toward the cybercrime lab. Something tells me we're about to uncover something much bigger than we bargained for. The hallway seems to stretch endlessly before them as they walk toward what might be the most shocking revelation of their careers. Completely unaware that Mia is watching them leave through the interrogation room's window, her hand instinctively moving toward something hidden beneath her clothes. The warehouse door crashes open with a thunderous bang that echoes through the concrete corridors. Officer Stevens raises his hand, signaling for complete silence as he peers into the dimly lit space ahead. What they discover inside defies every expectation they had about this case. Rows upon rows of makeshift living quarters line the warehouse floor, each barely larger than a prison cell. The stench of fear and desperation hangs heavy in the air. But it's not just the physical evidence that stops them in their tracks. It's the sheer scale of the operation. This isn't some small-time street gang preying on vulnerable kids. This is something far more sinister and organized than either officer imagined. Jesus Christ, Tammy whispers under her breath, her hand instinctively moving to her radio. Mark, we're going to need backup. A lot of backup. But before Stevens can respond, Mia grabs Tammy's arm with surprising strength. Wait! she pleads, her voice barely audible. You don't understand what you're walking into. These people, they have connections everywhere. Even in places you'd never suspect. The weight of her words hits both officers like a sledgehammer. Tammy studies Mia's face, searching for any hint of deception. But all she sees is raw, genuine terror. Mia, you need to tell us everything. Right now. No more games, no more half-truths. Lives are at stake here. Mia's hands shake as she pulls out a crumpled photograph from her jacket pocket. The image shows her standing next to a man in an expensive suit. But his face has been deliberately scratched out with a pen. This man, she says, her voice cracking with emotion. He's the one who recruited me 3 months ago. He promised my mom and me a way out of our financial problems. Said I could make easy money just by being friendly to certain clients. Stevens feels his stomach drop. Mia, are you telling us you were being trafficked? Not exactly, she replies, wiping tears from her cheeks. At least not at first. It started small, just accompanying businessmen to dinner, being arm candy at fancy events. But then things changed. They started asking for more, demanding more. When I tried to back out, they threatened my mother. The pieces of the puzzle start clicking into place with horrifying clarity. Tammy realizes why Mia was so defensive during their initial questioning, why she seemed terrified of revealing too much information. She wasn't just a witness to criminal activity. She was a victim trapped in an impossible situation. But here's what makes Mia's story even more devastating. The man in the photograph isn't just some random criminal mastermind. According to Mia, he works for a legitimate nonprofit organization that claims to help at-risk youth find employment opportunities. The perfect cover for identifying and recruiting vulnerable targets. They have a whole system, Mia explains, her voice gaining strength as she continues. Social workers, guidance counselors, even some cops, they're all feeding information to this network. Kids who are struggling, families in debt, anyone who might be desperate enough to take what seems like easy money. Stevens exchanges a meaningful look with Tammy. They both understand the implications of what Mia is revealing. If her allegations are true, this case could expose corruption reaching deep into the city's social services system and potentially their own police department. The sound of approaching vehicles outside the warehouse interrupts their conversation. Multiple engines, heavy footsteps, voices shouting orders. But these aren't police sirens, they're something else entirely. They found us, Mia whispers, her face draining of all color. We have to go. Now. Tammy draws her weapon, positioning herself between Mia and the warehouse entrance. Stevens, call for immediate backup. Tell them we have officer safety concerns and possible corruption involved. Use code 7. But as Stevens reaches for his radio, Mia drops another bombshell that changes everything. Officer Lee, there's something else you need to know. Something that's going to make this 10 times more complicated than you think. She takes a deep breath, gathering courage for what she's about to reveal. The evidence I've been hiding, it's not just about what I saw or what happened to me. I've been recording everything for the past 6 weeks. Every meeting, every conversation, every crime I witnessed. And some of those recordings include voices you're going to recognize. The implications hit both officers simultaneously. Not only do they have evidence of a massive trafficking operation, but they potentially have proof of law enforcement corruption. However, they still don't know the full extent of what Mia has captured or who might be implicated. The footsteps outside grow closer, and shadows move past the frosted windows near the warehouse entrance. Time is running out, and they need to make a decision about their next move. But Mia hesitates once again, clutching something beneath her clothing. There's one more thing, she says, her voice trembling with anticipation. The most important piece of evidence I have, the one that can bring down this entire operation, it's not just an audio recording. The warehouse door explodes inward as armed figures storm through the entrance. The tension in the police station reaches its breaking point as Officer Tammy leans forward, her voice gentle but urgent. Mia, we know you're scared, but we need that final piece of information. Lives are at stake here. Mia's hands tremble as she looks between Mark and Tammy, then down at her worn sneakers. The weight of her decision hangs heavy in the air. Outside, sirens wail as backup units prepare for what could be the final confrontation with the trafficking ring. "You promised you'd keep me safe," Mia whispers, her voice barely audible above the station's bustling activity. "And we will," Mark assures her, pulling up a chair to sit at her eye level. "But we need to know everything. What were you really hiding when we found you in that alley?" Mia takes a shuddering breath, her young face showing wisdom far beyond her 15 years. Slowly, she reaches beneath her skirt's waistband, her movements deliberate and careful. Both officers watch intently as she produces a small, sophisticated recording device, no bigger than a matchbox but clearly expensive and high-tech. "Jesus," Tammy breathes, recognizing the device immediately. "That's military-grade equipment. Where did you get that?" "My uncle gave it to me before he died," Mia explains, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He was a private investigator, and he suspected something was happening in our neighborhood. Kids were disappearing, and the police weren't connecting the dots. He trained me to use this, told me to document everything if anything ever happened to him." Mark's expression shifts from confusion to awe as the pieces fall into place. "You've been recording them?" Mia nods vigorously. "For 3 months. Every meeting, every transaction, every time they talked about moving girls across state lines. I have names, dates, locations, everything. But they found out somehow, and that's why they were after me in the alley. They knew I had evidence." The recording device seems to pulse with significance as Mia places it on the table between them. Tammy immediately calls for the tech specialist, her hands shaking with excitement and disbelief. "Mia, do you understand what this means?" Mark asks, his voice filled with admiration. "This could bring down the entire operation. Not just the local guys, but their suppliers, their buyers, everyone involved." As the tech specialist begins extracting the audio files, the room fills with the voices of criminals discussing their heinous plans. Names of missing girls, pickup locations, payment schedules. It's all there, crystal clear and legally admissible. Within hours, coordinated raids across 3 states result in the arrest of 47 individuals connected to the trafficking ring. The evidence Mia collected leads to the rescue of 23 young women and girls, some who had been missing for over a year. But the transformation goes deeper than just solving the case. As news of Mia's bravery spreads through the community, something beautiful begins to happen. Her mother, Deborah, initially devastated by the danger her daughter was in, becomes overwhelmed with pride at her courage. "I can't believe my little girl did all this," Deborah says through tears as she holds Mia tight in the police station. "I'm so proud of you, baby. And I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." The healing between mother and daughter is immediate and profound. Deborah quits her 3rd job to spend more time with Mia, and together they start speaking at community events about recognizing the signs of trafficking and protecting vulnerable youth. 3 months later, at a community recognition ceremony, Mia stands before 200 neighbors, no longer the frightened girl from the alley, but a confident young woman with a powerful message. "I never thought I could make a difference," she says, her voice steady and strong. "But I learned that sometimes the scariest thing you can do is also the most important. Every single one of you has the power to protect someone, to speak up, to be brave when it matters most." Officer Mark, now promoted to detective, watches from the audience with tears in his eyes. The girl who once ran from them in fear had become the hero who saved countless others. The story of Mia Carter becomes a beacon of hope, proving that heroism isn't about being fearless. It's about acting despite your fear. Her courage sparked a movement in her community, with neighbors now actively watching out for each other's children and reporting suspicious activities. As Mia concludes her speech to thunderous applause, she looks directly at the camera documenting the event. If you see something wrong happening in your community, don't wait for someone else to act. You might be the only one who can make the difference. Be brave. Be the hero someone needs. The recording device that once held evidence of unspeakable crimes now sits in an evidence locker, but its legacy lives on in the lives it saved and the community it transformed. Sometimes the most powerful weapons against evil are the smallest acts of courage, carried out by those who refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice.